Teacher and students, submit your stories about intercepted notes being passed in class. Had a science teacher who confiscated a note that this messed up boy had written to this girl who had just broken up with him. She read it aloud to the whole class. It was full of personal information and was very emotional. Everyone laughed at him and the boy was humiliated. That night he slit his wrists and died. The teacher was fired. That escalated quickly. I found a note under the seat of an extremely talkative female student after class. I knew she was dating a student called Ron. It listed all of the things she was going to do to him after school, all of which were sexual in nature. My favorite part was when she said she wanted to taste the Ronbo. I was a second-year teacher at the time and I really didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So I got a red pen and corrected all of the grammar and spelling mistakes. The next day before her class strolled in, I placed it on the seat of her desk. She immediately knew I was the one who graded it. We never discussed it, but I had very few problems with her talking the rest of the year. I lost it when I read Rombo. Ron didn't even register when I read it. I read Rainbow. Taste the Ronbo. Ha ha. Awesome. Not intercepted, but I found it after lab where two guys would always sit. Pretty sure they both wrote it because it was on the back of one of their lab sheets that they left behind. Person 1, boobs. Person 2, yeah, I know. Such a simple exchange, almost poetic really. The beauty of brotherhood. Toward the end of 8th grade, my band class wanted to do something nice for our teacher. We were passing a note about it around during class, and the teacher caught on and demanded to see it. Of course, no one wanted the teacher to see this note, so someone told the kid who was holding it to eat it. Everyone joined in and the entire class chanted, "Eat it!" So he shoved the paper into his mouth while looking the teacher right in the eyes. The teacher was so shocked he let it go and the surprise went off without any other problems. That's sweet. Did you ever tell the teacher that's why the kid ate the paper? If I were your band teacher, I would have instantly burst into tears. If I remember it correctly, we presented the gifts at a concert, and I'm pretty sure a round of applause happened for the kid who ate the paper. The teacher was all teared up. My friends and I were clandestinely doing a Mad Lib in AP English, and our teacher confiscated it. She read the first sentence and couldn't help but chortle. It was something like, "Dear Mom, Terry Schiavo won't stop waxing my butthole." 15 years ago when I was a new teacher, I confiscated a note that was a caricature of me with one hand down my pants and the other pushing a finger up my nose. I still have it. It was really funny. I wish I also had a picture of the absolute look of terror on the 6th grader's face when I confiscated it. I gave him a dry eyebrow raised look and we never spoke of it again. He was in my corner after that. I had a student the year before pass a note that said his nipples look like mushrooms. I couldn't help but laugh and realize it was time to get in shape. My freshman year in math, the girl behind was passing notes to the girl in front. She would just have me hand them to her. Eventually, after getting tired of passing it for her, I decided to just read it. The note basically said something like, "Something bad is about to happen. I can see my birthmark and it only shows up when something bad is about to happen." I showed it to the kid next to me and we started laughing. She started crying and left class. She was right. Well, it was almost intercepted. I was passing a note when the teacher asked me for it. I ate it. That's right. She sent me to the principal. Think about that conversation. "So, what depends? Why are you here?" "Well, I ate paper." "Son, get out of my office and don't eat paper." "But, what did the note say?" It was 5th grade, so probably some hardcore drug deal out on the playground. Teacher took a note from my friend who was asking his other friend if he also looked and compared how hairy the guys were in the locker room. Needless to say, we all erupted in laughter. This was in 8th grade. Everyone does that, right? Bro, it's totally normal. My sister is a teacher, grades 3 and 4. They were just learning about some sex ed, but obviously still very, very naive. One day she caught a note being passed from a boy to a girl saying, "I like your bobs." She found it extremely hard to keep herself composed. It's so innocent, it's hilarious. My chorus teacher sings the note she catches. She usually just skims through it, but this time she just put the paper on the piano and started singing. It ends up being an entire story about a girl who ended up dating her cousin. Very uncomfortable for the entire room. Skyrockets in flight. Woo! Afternoon delight. Whoop! When my mother was a teacher in inner city middle school, she found a note left behind in a classroom that said something along the lines of, "I really hope I can get pregnant by the age of 16 because I don't want my child to have an old mom." I just remember asking myself, what is wrong with the world? I had a teacher confiscate a note I was passing to a friend, only it wasn't a note, it was a tampon. That's bloody hilarious. Badumtish. I'm glad you skipped the padding and got straight to the pun. My friend and I were passing a note about how hot we thought our German teacher was, and he took it, read it, looked at us, both of us were very red-faced by that point, and just shook his head. The next day he assigned us to seats on the opposite side of the classroom. There have been no more giggle times in mein classroom. As a person who took a few years of German, I tried to translate your words. I then felt slightly dumb. I had a teacher do the same thing, but she didn't think it through first and didn't pretend to read it. She actually read it. Unfortunately, it was written to a friend who was constantly harassed by some girls, and the note said, "Don't let Elisa bother you. In 5 years, you'll be graduating college and she'll just be worn out." Guess who was in the class with us? The teacher got in a metric ton of trouble, which I kind of feel bad about, but not really, because she should have read the note to herself first. I got a 3-day suspension. I was more or less right about that girl, though. I am kind of glad you were right about that girl. Girls like that can make people's lives horrible. Not really an intercepted note, but in my freshman English class, I dropped a few papers out of my notebook and the teacher caught me picking them up. Then she had me read my note aloud, saying something like, "We don't pass notes in my class. If you can't say something out loud, then it doesn't belong here." So I read my past note. English quiz 1. Number 1. When Romeo, etc., etc., etc. She stopped me before I could do the answer, and I was like, "Are you sure you don't want me to read the answer? I got the full 10 points for it." I got detention. When I was a freshman in my high school literature class, we all had assigned seating. I'm not sure who instigated it, but a correspondence started between me and another girl from a different period, all written in pencil on the desk. At first, we wrote simple "hi" and "hi yourself" notes. But throughout the semester, our notes got longer and longer, and we became kind of pen pals. We never discussed anything bad. I guess we were both pretty good girls. Our teacher caught on and actually encouraged it. Eventually, we stopped writing on the desk and just left notes on paper to each other. Her class period was before mine, and she left the note she wrote with the teacher. At the beginning of each class, our teacher brought me the note she had written. I'd leave one with him for her after class. It went on all year. I intercepted a note from an 11-year-old boy. He was passing the note to a girl he was asking out. The kid was furious with me, and the next day I received a picture he drew of me in Cauldron because I blew his only chance with the girl. Always wondered about the dating scene at Hogwarts. I taught 8th grade English in a rural country in the Bible Belt. I taught Midsummer Night's Dream after TCAP, standardized end-of-year tests. The last 2 months of school was babysitting. I found a note passed between 2 boys. It was about one of the main characters in the play, and it was written in Elizabethan English. It was written poorly, but they had really put some effort into the trash talk. I found out later who had written it and gave them extra credit for paying attention to such a degree as to replicate Shakespearean-style language. It was one of the top 10 that made me excited to be teaching. Had some criminals in class, and nowadays, majority of them are in prison. Anyway, one day, one of them passed a note saying, "Meet me with stuff at 8," or something along those lines to another one, and the teacher intercepted it. Not being the smartest girl, plus being new on school, she read it in front of the class and laughed at these guys. Same teacher was jumped by some strangers later that day and got her nose broken. Well, that escalated quickly. If she makes a move, for example, if she asks for your number, it shows that if she wants you, she will actually try, and she won't wait around for you to ask. Also, if she calls you just to hear your voice. As a girl, what attracts me most to a guy is the sound of his voice. When people would play the games where you'd send a whisper down the line of us during lunch, I'd pretend I was on the internet on dial-up to mess with the call. I just wanted to eat in peace. Debbie Downer. Nigel no friends. When I was in junior high, I used to write notes with crazy made-up stories in them, and when no one was looking, drop them in the hallway. I never put any names on it or anything, so people would just wonder what they were about. I did this too, except the note somehow ended up in our principal's hands. The note talked about a girl hiding weed in one of her textbooks. They ended up searching all the lockers in our school, and coincidentally enough, some girl got caught with weed. Perhaps I'm just a clueless vigilante. My mom has been teaching middle school for 25 years, so I figured she'd have some awesome good stories. I just asked and she said nothing. I don't really read them because I figured they're private. I just scan them for anything I should report related to safety, and then throw them away. I am both proud and disappointed. My IT teacher once told us a story of a student that has drawn a caricature about the teacher being fat, which the teacher kinda is. He gave the kid $20 and still has it hanging on his fridge. Do kids in school even still pass notes? I would assume that under the desk texting has made this obsolete. I'm sure current teachers will be able to tell us. I think the written notes still outnumber the secret text. It's harder to pull off the texting under the desk trick than you think. Though my classroom layout makes it easier to spot them than a layout with rows of desks facing forward. If you write a note in class, it's possible to look like you were just taking notes. If you have your eyes down towards your lap, it's a bit more obvious. Taking your cell phone to the bathroom and texting people from there, though, that's the new hotness. In primary school, I had a teacher in grade 5 who would read out the notes passed around if she caught it happening. So I wrote out a note and made it obvious I was trying to pass it to someone. She got the note brought to the front of the room and started to read it out. It said, "Thank you, students. You can all go home now. Class dismissed." She had a laugh about that one. Hee hee. As a teacher, one of my first class rules is if you get caught passing a note, I will read it out to the class. Usually this stops it. If it doesn't, I'll take the note and providing it's not too embarrassing, I'll read it out to the class. If it's a really personal note, I'll make something up like, "Don't you think less than 12 parsecs is the best teacher in the school and deserves some sort of award?"